Kyle Whittingham screwed over Utah again, guys. And this is the most upsetting of the bunch. And I say that because of the tweet that we got from Mark Harlan, the athletic director at Utah. You have to see the tweet from Mark Harlan, the athletic director at Utah. Was he over the line? Was Kyle Whittingham over the line for pulling this latest stunt and this latest move? Look, it's no secret by this point that Kyle Whittingham has not been shy at all about digging at Utah. And really, I say digging. It's not digging is probably not the fair word there because it makes it seem like he's just going and doing this to needle Utah for no reason, like annoying them, like a little brother coming to annoy. That's not what this is. This is Kyle Whittingham like taking legitimate shots at Utah, pulling away coaches, pulling away players, doing active harm to the Utah football program. 6 coaches. I keep saying 6. It's 7. Strength coaches matter as well. I should be saying 7 because the strength coach went as well. So 7 coaches and 4 players. And these are some big names, man. John Henry Daly, All-American pass rusher, second in the Big 12. Behind David Bailey, John Henry Daly was the best pass rusher in the Big 12. Smith Snowden, second team All-Big 12 corner. Jonah Ea, pretty good defensive tackle. And the one that seemingly hurt Utah fans the most before this, JJ Buchanan, stud tight end, true freshman. Michigan's listing him as a receiver. If you listen to Alex Markham on the channel recently, I mean, he said, look, I thought this would be the number 1 receiver on the team next year. So JJ Buchanan, and that's when I think Utah felt like they had locked in. Hey, you're going to be the number 1 guy next year. Whittingham swoops in, pulls him back away to Michigan. And maybe a lot of that you could say is Jason Beck, the offensive coordinator over there too. But ultimately, all of it is traced back to Kyle Whittingham. But that's no longer JJ Buchanan, the one that hurts the most. We have a new leader in the clubhouse for that, and it became official on Friday. That is the number 1 recruit in the 2026 recruiting class for the Utes. Look, some of these, I think Utah fans, as we heard from Alex Markham, have been able to, Utah fans can explain it away a bit, at least, like, hey, Smith Snowden may have been slightly underwhelming this year, and if he's asking for way too much, do you want to invest that much of your rev share pot on this guy? Maybe not. Okay, like I'll listen to that. John Henry Daly, I can certainly listen to like, hey, this guy had a really serious injury the next to last game of the regular season. And if it takes him a full year to recover, I mean, you're not going to have him for very much of the next year. And then he's going to be asking for a really high number. Can you take that? You can probably take that on if you're Michigan, but can you take that on if you're Utah? Okay, I get it. I understand. I'm there. But taking the number 1 recruit in the 2026 recruiting class, it's a different deal. Like it's a pretty big blow, especially when he had already been in classes at Utah. And that, I'm going to get to the tweet from Mark Harlan in just a sec. But I mean, that is so emblematic of where we're at as a sport right now, man. You had a kid that was a top recruit who had just flipped a month ago from Tennessee to Utah, gets there, he's in classes, and then boom, he's gone. And he's going to follow your coach to Michigan. And that's what happened. Celesi Moa announced on Friday at a Polynesian All-Star game that he had flipped to Michigan. Depending on where you look, some have him as the number 1 athlete in the recruiting class, the number 6 receiver, number 38 overall player, according to ESPN. Like, this is a highly recruited kid. Number 1 in the state of Utah, had been a Tennessee commit. Big deal when Utah was able to win his commitment for a little while there. So, is this below the belt from Kyle Whittingham? Is this a move that should be condemned by Kyle Whittingham? Like, how do we feel about this? And was it below the belt for Mark Harlan to respond the way that he did? Because Mark Harlan, I'm going to pull up here the Deseret News. I thought I had saved this picture. My apologies. So credit to the Deseret News here for screenshotting this. And you know what? I retweeted it. I should have screenshot this from Utah AD Mark Harlan when it happened, because I probably should have figured like, hey, this one may not stand the test of time. It was up for a while. But it did not make it to right now on the show. But you can see here, Mark Harlan quote tweeting the tweet about the announcement here says, well, he was in class with us last week, public announcement, ... Seen it all now. Probably not. Okay, you can sense the sarcasm there. I feel like the way I'm reading this is important. This is, to me, the tone that's being conveyed there. Well, he was in class with us for a week. Public announcement. Seen it all now. Probably not. Making light of the fact here that not only is he flipping, not only was he already in class, but then you're doing like the public announcement as if it were the first time you were committing out of high school, right? That sort of thing. Look, I understand Mark Harlan's frustration. I think that I have a number of different reactions to this. Okay. And I know people want to, depending on your fandom, which flag's flying outside of your house, you want to rush into one response or the other. I've got some middle ground here. Look, Mark Harlan just responded the way I think almost every athletic director out there in the country has wanted to respond to a situation that happened to their school at one point or another, because these types of things are just happening everywhere. There are so many people that have wanted to do what Mark Harlan just did there. That is a very natural reaction for somebody that's associated with Utah to have. The system is totally messed up when this is something that can happen. Kid commits, goes into class, is there, and then decides, well, no, never mind. Skirt, I'm going to Michigan. The sport would be far better off if we had some sort of guardrails where like stuff like that wasn't happening. Okay. Now, having said that, for the kid, Celeste Moa, and the school, Michigan and Kyle Whittingham, I can't blame them. I mean, I don't blame them. I saw someone in the chat saying like, how can you blame the kid? I don't blame the kid here. I don't think that this is something I would go after the kid for. Like, teach me the rules, I'll play the game. You're operating within the rules. Your offensive coordinator that you committed to and the head coach you committed to are now at a bigger school, and a school that you were looking at already anyway. Yeah, man, like I get it. It makes total sense. Kyle Whittingham, you're at Michigan now. Utah essentially chose Morgan Scalley over you. So now you're at a bigger job. Like, you got to be all in at Michigan. You got to use all the resources that you have to go try to win games for the University of Michigan. That is your job. Again, don't hate the player, hate the game. So that is not what this is about. And then for Mark Harlan, a couple of other thoughts. I appreciate that he is willing to engage like this. He has made a habit of doing this over the years on Twitter. One time was even in response to me. Longtime listeners of the channel here, back when it was just John Kurtz, not open for business, will remember this. This was after Utah won its last Pac-12 championship by beating USC, and I said I was making light of the fact that Pac-12 had a standalone Friday night game with huge playoff implications and their biggest brand that is leaving soon. I was referring to USC, and was almost 3.5 million behind a couple of non-Oklahoma, Texas Big 12 teams in viewership numbers. Well, Mark Harlan quote tweeted it and said, "We are not leaving." Very clever tweet. I was obviously referring to USC. He's saying, no, we're the biggest brand and we're not leaving. Pretty good stuff from Mark Harlan there. It was an entertaining tweet. I appreciate that he is willing to do that. Now, he takes a lot of crap for some of his tweets, this being one of them. As I bring up Old Takes Exposed, I'm sorry, Mark, to bring up the Old Takes Exposed version here, but Dennis Dodd's story about the four corner schools, and Mark Harlan says, give me a break. As in, like, we're not leaving. Of course, that didn't age well. We know that they are now in the Big 12. So it did happen. But I enjoy that in a world where we just get coach speak answers and nobody willing to actually speak their own thoughts. I appreciate an athletic director that will do that every once in a while, have a little bit of fun and engage like that. The problem here, and what you've probably all been waiting for me to say, is that it's not great when the target of this one seems to ultimately be the player. Whether or not that was his true intention, the target seems to be the player. Because he's talking about, well, hey, he was in class with us, and wow, he's doing an announcement. Now I've seen it all. Probably not. I mean, I think his frustration there is ultimately the system and where we're at and all this. But the way it's communicated, it's very easy to just take it as like, well, there's an athletic director going on Twitter and slamming a player. That's how it kind of comes off. And Celeste Moa is not that's not the guy I would be taking aim at here. I don't think that's a great look, and that's probably why ultimately that tweet winds up being deleted. But it shows you just, I mean, I think that's also something that would show like how messy of a situation this has been and how much this is worn on Utah. Like everything that's happened here with Whittingham pulling people back over. And like you can come up with reasons why Utah will be fine every step of the way, and they very well could still be fine. But enough of this has happened now that it's like, hey, this hurts. Like this definitely hurts. You've taken on some real water here. And some of that's starting to come through now with this being a particularly painful one. Like this was a huge local recruiting win. This guy's got credible ceiling, a lot of potential. There are a lot of feelings involved here at this point, and it's yet another one. You thought, man, it's at least no more from the 25 portal class, and no, well, here comes one from the recruiting class. So I kind of understand everybody here. I don't begrudge Utah fans at all for hating Kyle Whittingham right now. Full stop. I think anybody in Utah fans' position right now, whether or not you would say, well, Kyle did kind of get nudged out a little bit by Utah. Like, oh, I mean, okay, but the fans are looking there saying like, well, you set the boundaries. You started setting a timeline on when you were going to retire in the first place yourself. And that wasn't us. And everything has just been in response to that. And we had Scally lined up and we were going to lose him. Like, I get it. And then you're like, man, and then you lose and you start pulling everyone away, or you leave and you start pulling everyone away from here. I get it, Utah fans. I feel the same way. I'd be very upset. I have a hard time crushing Kyle Whittingham, though. He's operating within the system. He is at a big boy job. That is a big boy job with a capital B. You can't pussyfoot around and just not go get guys that you know you could get because you're trying to be nice to your previous employer. You can't do that. I also don't think ultimately this is something that like a decade from now is going to have really hurt his legacy. Especially if Morgan Scally is legit. If Morgan Scally is legit, this is not going to prevent a statue from being up there for Kyle Whittingham, I don't think. Kyle Whittingham is the reason Utah has a legitimate chance to make it through to the next iteration of college football and is not in the Mountain West anymore, right? So he's given you way more than 7 staffers and 5 players are worth at this point in time. I think in time, cooler heads will prevail, but in the moment, I understand everybody's feelings on this. I understand where everyone is at on that.